At 7:55 a.m., the heat inside the briefing room clung to the skin like damp canvas. Diesel fumes drifted in from a nearby generator. Mixing with the fine dust kicked up from the compound's helipad, Staff Sergeant Rachel Novak sat alone on a folding chair near the rear corner. Her attention locked on the Barrett M107A, one resting across her thighs. She moved with the precision of ritual bolt open. Chamber clear. Wiping the chamber face with a cloth she'd folded just right. The rifle's matte black receiver gleamed under the fluorescent light. The men who walked in didn't notice. At first, boots scuffed against concrete, chairs creaked. Rangers from 2nd Battalion filed in first, followed by SEAL Team 3 operators. They spoke low and sparse. Everyone knew today's mission mattered. A HVT meeting in the valley. High risk. High return. Rachel didn't look up when they entered. She never did. Her job wasn't to mingle. It was to cover them when the bullets started flying. The door slammed open. A gust of hot wind carried in 2 lieutenants, 3 staff commanders, and Vice Admiral Rachel Brennan. His khakis were pressed, boots spotless, ribbons thick across his chest like a prize wall at a dog show. He moved like the air belonged to him. The chatter died within seconds of his arrival. He scanned the room with that high command gaze. Pausing when he saw Rachel, his pace slowed. His eyes fell on the Barrett. Propped beside her. She didn't move, just continued reassembling the bipod like he wasn't there. The silence wasn't defiance. It was habit. Then came the voice, loud and crisp. "Get your pretty little hands off that rifle." "Sweetheart." The words dropped like a round hitting steel. No one spoke. Chief Petty Officer Jackson shifted his weight slightly, jaw tightening. One of the Rangers coughed into his hand. Rachel blinked once, then wiped down the barrel with the same focus she'd had seconds earlier. Her heartbeat didn't change. She'd heard worse. She'd also outshot all of them. Brennan stepped closer, now towering over her. His tone turned amused. "That's a man's weapon. What are you planning to do with it? Scare off the dust?" She finished cleaning the suppressor mount, clicked it into place. Still no eye contact. Still no words. Not yet. Master Sergeant Lewis, standing near the map table, cleared his throat. "Sir." Staff Sergeant Novak holds the theater distance record, 2280 meters. Confirmed by 3 spotters. Brennan waved a dismissive hand like brushing away a fly. "I've been shooting since Annapolis. Competitive. Precision isn't just pulling a trigger. Sergeant. It's understanding pressure." Rachel finally looked up. Not hostile. Not defiant. Just still. Her green eyes gave nothing away. She saw a man who hadn't touched field soil in years, trying to measure her by medals and pedigree. He reached down and grabbed the barrel. She didn't flinch. But the room did. Every operator there understood. You don't touch another shooter's rifle without permission. Especially not a zeroed Barrett. It was more than disrespect. It was like walking into someone's home and smashing the family photos. Rachel's left hand stopped mid-motion on her ammo pouch. For a beat, no one breathed. Chief Jackson said her name once. Just Rachel. A warning and a plea packed into one syllable. She didn't respond. Inside, her grandfather's voice came back. "Never let them see you break." The Admiral held the weapon a moment longer, testing her, smiling like it was a game. Then he let go. "Fine. We'll see if the quota system keeps up when things get real." He turned his back and walked toward the map table, confident he'd won. Rachel adjusted her sling, locked the bipod, and stood. She didn't need to answer him. Not yet, because when it came time to speak, it would be through her trigger finger. Rachel grew up in the kind of Wyoming town that didn't bother with streetlights or stop signs. It was all dirt roads, wind-scarred fences, and the sound of old trucks downshifting 2 miles out. Her grandfather, Mikhail, kept a weathered Remington 700 locked in a handmade case by the back door. He never talked much about his time with the Soviet Army. But the way he handled that rifle said plenty. His left eye had a faded scar from shrapnel, and he always made her shoot right-handed. Even though she was born left-dominant, said it forced discipline. The first time he took her out, she was 9. They drove an hour into the prairie before stopping at a clearing that looked the same as the rest of the land. He didn't explain how to aim. He just sat beside her and let the silence fill the air until her hands steadied. By 12, she could hit a prairie dog at 500 yards with wind gusting sideways. Mikhail would nod once when she made the shot. That was his version of praise. Her father, Tom Novak, wasn't thrilled about any of it. He'd done his time in the Marines during Desert Storm, crewing an AAV and watching young guys burn out before 30 cents. He wanted something quieter for Rachel, something safer. She didn't push back. She just kept showing up on the range after school, drilling patterns into targets like she was stitching her name into the Wyoming dirt. At a local veterans reunion when she was 16, someone brought out a set of steel plates at 600 meters, mostly for fun. Rachel picked up her grandfather's rifle without saying anything and rang the bell on every shot. The crowd went quiet. Her father didn't say a word on the ride home. But the next morning, the truck was gassed up and pointed toward the recruiting office. He waited outside while she filled out the paperwork. Mikhail never said goodbye. He just handed her the worn-down rifle cloth he'd used for 30 years and told her to keep it clean. No speeches. No drama. Just legacy. Handed down one shot at a time. Fort Moore didn't care about intentions. It only measured performance. The Army sniper course pushed Rachel Novak past every threshold she thought she knew. Each morning started before 5. By 5:15 a.m., they were running rucks uphill with 50 pounds of gear. By 6, they were crawling through red Georgia clay under tripwires. Soaked and blistered. Before the first round even chambered, the instructors never said anything directly about her being the only woman in the class, but the expectations hung heavier on her than the weight plates in her ruck. Every calculation had to be perfect. Every shot recorded. Her logs were checked twice as often. Her scope mounts were inspected more than anyone else's. She kept quiet, kept shooting, and kept her name off every complaint list. When the others relaxed during breaks, she cleaned her optics and practiced dialing corrections blindfolded. She cycled through multiple weapon systems during training. The MAC-13 Mod 7 gave her tighter groupings at medium range, but she found the bolt too slow for reactive overwatch. The M2010 ESR handled elevation shifts well, especially in the Appalachian rotation, but lacked the raw stopping power she trusted. She preferred the Barrett M107A1. It was heavy, brutal, and required absolute control, but it delivered. Every time. She knew the recoil. She trusted the rhythm. It didn't care about gender. By the 4th week, the instructors stopped checking her calculations. They started using her wind calls to calibrate the other candidates' estimates. One of them, a master sergeant with a combat action badge from Afghanistan, pulled her aside after a night exercise and told her she had the cleanest trigger break he'd ever seen. She nodded, said nothing, and got back in line. She graduated top of her class. Her final exercise, a 280-meter confirmed impact through shifting crosswinds, set a new course record. 3 spotters confirmed. Video verified. The certificate was handed to her by the battalion commander himself. No speech, just a handshake and a folder with her name spelled correctly. Rachel didn't need applause. She needed results. And at Fort Moore, she left nothing to interpretation. At 800 hours, the air in the briefing room was already thick. Folding chairs lined the cinderblock walls, and laminated valley maps were pinned in crooked rows along the front. The generators outside rumbled low, blending with the scrape of boots and the occasional muttered range call. Staff Sergeant Rachel Novak sat quietly at the rear, checking her databook one more time before the operation brief began. Her Barrett M107A1 leaned against the table beside her. Bipod folded. Chamber locked. Muzzle forward. Everything by the book. Vice Admiral Richard Brennan entered precisely on time. His polished boots tapping hard across the floor. 3 stars on his collar. Half a century of bureaucracy on his shoulders. He paused just inside the door, taking in the room like he expected it to salute. His eyes skipped over the SEALs and Rangers, then locked on Rachel. He walked straight toward her. She didn't stand, didn't flinch. Her hands moved deliberately as she tightened the drag bag straps on the Barrett, watching him in her peripheral vision like he was just another silhouette downrange. This, the marksman I've been hearing about. His voice carried. The room went still. Chief Petty Officer Jackson shifted in his seat, arms folded. Master Sergeant Lewis raised an eyebrow without turning. Neither spoke. Brennan glanced down at the rifle. You even know how to use that thing. Sergeant, looks like it weighs more than you do. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her jacket patch and call sign were enough. Viper. Brennan smiled like he'd made a point, then reached out. The second his hand touched the barrel, the temperature in the room dropped. Everyone noticed. SEALs sat up straighter. A junior ranger stopped mid-note. Rachel's fingers paused on the strap buckle. Her tone stayed even. Sir, that rifle zeroed from my profile? Eye relief. Cheek weld. Trägertension. Brennan ignored the warning, lifted the weapon off the table like he was inspecting a novelty. Maybe I'll test it myself, see if it's as impressive as the paperwork says. Chief Jackson sat forward. Sir, with respect, that's a bad idea. She's the best shot we've got on this rotation. Brennan snorted. I've fired long range since Annapolis. I can tell real skill from optics and luck. Rachel didn't rise. She locked her pack and kept her voice low. Sir, respectfully, hands off the rifle. It's not calibrated for you. You'll knock the optic alignment. Master Sergeant Lewis stood now, arms crossed. His voice stayed calm. Sir, she pulled overwatch on 3 of our patrols. Cleared 6 threats before first contact. We don't make numbers like that up. Brennan turned toward him, annoyed. It's not about numbers. It's about confidence in the field. You start putting too much faith in optics. You forget what real instinct looks like. He shifted the rifle in his hands, muzzle pointing down now. Grip awkward. He didn't even shoulder it. Rachel rose slowly. No sudden moves. She stepped forward 1 pace, eyes level with his chest. Sir, last warning. Please set the weapon down. Silence. Brennan looked at her for a moment longer, then placed the rifle back on the table. Not gently, not roughly, just enough to show he wasn't conceding. Let's hope you don't freeze up under pressure. Sweetheart. He turned and walked toward the projector screen as if nothing had happened. Rachel exhaled through her nose. No words. No drama. Just calculation. She reattached the sling and checked the optic again. 0 hadn't shifted. But something else had. Every operator in the room was watching her now. Not because she was a woman with a rifle, because they understood the line he'd just crossed, and the one she hadn't. At 8:15 a.m., the room hadn't cooled, but something in the air had shifted. Vice Admiral Brennan stood near the projector, still holding the Barrett M107A, one with one hand on the upper receiver, the other near the bipod mount. Rachel stood calm, eyes on the rifle. Not him. Around them, the SEALs and Rangers stayed quiet. No one reached for weapons. No one breathed wrong. But everyone was watching. Brennan adjusted his grip like he meant to hand the rifle back. Then, without warning, he yanked hard, maybe to test her resolve. Maybe just to prove something. Either way, it was a mistake. Rachel didn't think. Her training kicked in before the Barrett even cleared the table. She stepped forward, pivoted on her left foot, and used his own pull to shift his balance. Her right hand caught his wrist. Thumb pressing into the radial nerve, she rotated with her hips, locking his elbow, applying controlled pressure. The torque made him drop to one knee fast, pain blooming behind his eyes. There was a pop, not a break, but enough to send a message. Every special operator stood. Weapons stayed holstered. But the energy cracked like lightning in the air. Chief Jackson took half a step forward, but stopped. Lewis didn't move at all. No one did. The moment held. Rachel released the joint before it went too far. Brennan cradled his right hand, breathing through clenched teeth. Facepalm. Pride shattered. She stepped back. The room was silent. Her voice came steady. Not angry. Not even loud. Sir, give me 6 targets. Any distance you want. If I miss one, I'll take full responsibility. Court-martial. Reassignment. Whatever you see fit. She paused just long enough to let it sink in. But if I hit all 6, I get to run Overwatch. No interference. No more questions. The Admiral didn't look up right away. He flexed his fingers, wincing. A young lieutenant reached to help, but Brennan waved him off. He stood, slow and stiff, the weight of decision pressing on a bruised ego. He looked at Rachel like she was a puzzle he'd underestimated. Fine, he said. You get your 6. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't nod. But the agreement was made. Chief Jackson muttered something low to Lewis. This is going to spread like wildfire. And it did. By the time they reached the firing range, word had already moved through the FOB. A dozen Rangers had peeled off patrol prep. SEALs skipped chow. Even a few Air Force JTACs stood near the edge of the berm, arms folded. The Barrett sat on a shooting mat now. Bolt open. Mag out. Rachel walked up slow. Calm. Like it was another qual range on a Tuesday. She pulled her wind charts, adjusted elevation settings, and chambered a single round. She didn't look back at Brennan. She didn't need to, because the next words would come from her muzzle, not her mouth. The range sat just outside the wire, flanked by low ridgelines and the distant shimmer of heat bouncing off sand. The targets were steel silhouettes, staggered from 800 to 1,810 meters, each painted fresh and staked firm into uneven ground. The wind had picked up by 10:20 a.m., clocking steady at 12 knots with gusts closer to 15. Variable crosswind from right to left. Not ideal. Rachel lay prone behind her, Barrett M107, A1 on a canvas shooting mat. She didn't rush. The rifle rested on a bipod locked low, rear bag cinched under the buttstock. Spotting scope to her left, data book open. Laminated pages marked with dope from previous shots in similar conditions. She flipped to the wind chart for this altitude, made a note in pencil, then checked barometric pressure on her Kestrel. Air density read low. The valley heat would push her trajectory flatter on the first 3 shots. But at 1600 and out, the bullet would dip fast and late. She'd need to hold high and read the mirage tight. Behind her, the murmurs started to build. Quiet, professional. SEALs talked wind calls. A few Rangers shared bets under their breath. A Marine JTAC lit a dip and squinted through binoculars, watching Target 6. No one talked to Rachel. Not out of distance. Out of respect. She was in that zone now, where shooters go when the rest of the world turns down. She checked her scope one more time. Schmidt, Bender, 5, 2, 5x 56. Clean glass. 0 held. Elevation turret was dialed exact. But she always confirmed dope manually. 2 clicks up for the 1400. 4 1/4 for the 1810. Windage stayed neutral for now. She'd hold off the reticle if needed. Rachel adjusted her position. Right elbow under her. Left hand relaxed over the bipod frame. Her breathing slowed to 4-count intervals. In, hold, out, Pause. She blinked slowly, then let her cheek settle against the stock. The spotter beside her, a young staff sergeant from 10th Group, whispered his rangefinder readouts, confirmed distances. Targets were live. Rachel didn't answer. She'd already memorized the terrain. The light, the feel of the wind on the back of her neck. Now it was just math and instinct. And the trigger. The first shot came at 8:28 a.m. The 800-meter target was barely a warm-up. Rachel adjusted for minimal wind, held just off center to compensate for a slight left-to-right push, and squeezed. The Barrett cracked, and half a second later, the steel rang clean. Dead center. No follow-up needed. She cycled the bolt slowly, feeling the mechanics glide. Chambered the next round. 1,000 meters. Mirage was building low across the valley, bending the image just enough to throw less experienced shooters. She adjusted one click up, held a half mil to the right, and fired. The plate rocked. Another clean hit. At 1200. The wind gusted, right as she set up. She paused, waited out the shift, and ran her dope again. She dialed elevation precisely and held just above shoulder height. The round struck just left of center. Still a hit. No corrections needed. 1400 brought crosswinds and an uneven light signature from heat distortion. Rachel leaned into her training, slowed her breathing. She aimed a quarter mil low, trusting the tailwind. The impact hit high chest. The sound echoed back slower this time, but unmistakable. 1600 was trickier. The steel was thinner here. A challenge set by Brennan himself. She read the dust near the berms. Watching how it lifted and fell, she clicked 3 for elevation, held hard right for a high gust, and fired. The impact took over 2 seconds to return. Headshot. Then came the last one. 1800, 10 meters. The furthest plate, the edge of the Barrett's practical range in this heat. Rachel double-checked everything. Coriolis. Drop. Wind. She recalculated spin drift. Exhaled slow. And waited. The wind eased slightly. That was her moment. She pressed the trigger. The recoil hit her shoulder like a familiar handshake. Then silence. 3 seconds passed. Then the steel rang, deep and final, like a bell being struck at a funeral or a ceremony. Behind her, Brennan stood with his injured hand wrapped in gauze. No one said a word. He stepped forward, paused, and raised his left hand in a slow, clean salute. Then, steady and clear, he spoke. Staff Sergeant Novak, I was wrong. Consider this, my apology. At 05:20 a.m., the valley was still dark. A thin mist clung to the slopes, broken only by the soft hiss of comms traffic and the crackle of distant fires. Rachel Novak was already in position, prone in a shallow hide on the northern ridge. Herr Barrett M. 10, 7A 10. Her spotting scope aligned. The mission was a go. The task force moved silently through the lower ravines. SEAL Team 3 flanked from the east. 2nd Battalion Rangers approached from the south. Rachel's job was overwatch, high and far, eliminating threats before they ever saw movement. She scanned for sentries and posted guards anyone who might compromise the approach. Her first shot dropped a lone rifleman on a rock shelf at 800 meters, mid-shift during a cigarette break. No warning. No hecho. The next 2 came within 60 seconds. A pair of lookouts guarding a switchback trail. Rachel adjusted her wind hold, accounting for a 5-mile-per-hour cross breeze, and sent both rounds within 3 inches of each other. Chest shots. Silent radio channels confirmed 3 clearings. She shifted her body slightly, angling her bipod for the upper balcony of a stone compound. There, 2 more hostiles stood posted. Both fell in under 4 seconds. 5 down. 3 more to go. The 6th was pacing along a rooftop behind an uneven wall of sandbags. She waited, let him settle. A clean headshot through a break in the wall. The sound of steel bolt cycling was all she heard between confirmations. Target 7 moved through dense trees on the far ridge. Partial cover. Distance 1. 610 meters. She watched his silhouette between gaps in the branches, timed her shot with the sway. The moment came, and the round hit high shoulder. He folded. Then the last 1,987 meters. Narrow window. The shooter stood near a stone archway, adjusting gear. The gap between support pillars was just over 2 feet. Rachel made one elevation correction, held 1 full mil off for a shifting gust, and fired. 3 seconds later, the shot struck clean through the left lung. The man crumpled. A faint acknowledgement came through the comms. All threats down. The assault teams breached. 6 high-value targets secured. No friendly casualties. The mission was complete by 06:30 a.m. Later that day, Brennan submitted paperwork. Not just an after-action report. A recommendation. Silver Star. Citation for precision fire, resulting in operational success without exposure of ground units. He signed it himself. 3 months later, Rachel stood on a platform at Fort Liberty. Her orders placed her as the first female instructor assigned to the Special Forces Sniper Course, formerly SODIC. She didn't speak during the pinning. Just nodded once when the course commander gave her the tab. Her grandfather passed away 2 weeks later. Heart failure. Natural. Peaceful. Rachel flew home quietly. The medal sat next to his old Red Army sniper badge on a small wooden box by his bed. No words. Just 2 legacies. Side by side. She stayed one night, then flew back. The next class was already forming, and she had standards to maintain